This is Fyodor Dostoevsky, one of the most brilliant minds in literature. His novels explored the depths of human nature, consciousness, and the illusions we live under. But what most people don't know is that Dostoevsky suffered from something strange, a condition that made him question the very nature of thought itself. Before his epileptic seizures, he would experience what he described as a sudden, overwhelming flood of thoughts, emotions, and visions that didn't feel like his own. It was as if something had taken over his mind, filling it with uncontrollable ideas and insights that seemed to come from somewhere else. For him, this was both terrifying and enlightening. It forced him to ask a question that would later become the foundation of modern neuroscience and philosophy. If thoughts can appear without warning, without control, then are they really ours? Most people assume they are the thinker of their thoughts. They believe that they are the one generating ideas, making choices, and directing their own mind. But if you pay close attention, you'll notice something strange. Thoughts simply happen. Try this now. Sit still and wait for your next thought. Did you choose it? Or did it just appear? This realization is where everything starts to unravel. Neuroscientist Benjamin Libet ran an experiment in the 1980s that shattered the idea of free will. He placed sensors on people's brains and asked them to move their wrist whenever they felt like it. What he found was shocking. The brain had already made the decision before the person was aware of choosing. The conscious mind thought it was in control, but in reality, it was just catching up to something that had already been decided. If your brain is acting before you are aware of making a choice, if a thought appears before you can consciously think it, are you really the one in control? Your mind wants you to believe that you are thinking, that you are making choices. But if every thought is appearing without your permission, then where is it coming from? Most people never question this. They go through life assuming they are the thinker. But if you look closer, you'll see that your thoughts are just like clouds drifting across the sky. They come and go on their own, yet the sky remains unchanged. So if you are not the thoughts, then what are you? Most people believe that their mind is like a tool, something they use, something they control. But what if it's the other way around? What if your mind isn't just thinking, but thinking you? Philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer believed that our thoughts, desires, and actions are not truly chosen by us, but are driven by an unseen force he called the will. Schopenhauer described the will as an invisible current running beneath human consciousness, shaping our urges, our decisions, and even our perception of reality. He believed that we don't think our thoughts into existence. Instead, thoughts rise from the depths, like waves crashing onto the shore, and only after they appear do we take credit for them. The implications of this are unsettling. Right now, a thought is forming in your mind. Maybe it's questioning what you're hearing. Maybe it's a sudden memory, a feeling, an urge to do something else. But did you ask for that thought? Or did it simply happen? Science is beginning to confirm what Schopenhauer suspected, that our decisions and ideas are not under our direct control. In one experiment, scientists scanned people's brains while they were asked to make a simple choice: press a button with their left hand or their right hand. They could pick either one at any moment. But the results revealed something disturbing. The brain had already made the choice seconds before the person was consciously aware of deciding. The moment you feel like you're making a decision, your brain has already set it in motion. The feeling of, "I made this choice," is just the mind catching up to something that was already happening beneath the surface. This is why thoughts appear randomly. You don't control them. You don't pick which memory will surface or which word will repeat itself in your head. If you were truly in control of your thoughts, wouldn't you be able to stop them? Wouldn't you be able to clear your mind at will? But you can't, because thoughts are not something you do. They are something that happens to you. And here's the most important realization. You are not your thoughts. The moment you stop identifying with them, something shifts. You start noticing that thoughts appear and disappear, yet you remain. You are the awareness behind them, the observer, the one who watches thoughts come and go, but is not bound by them. If thoughts aren't truly yours, if they simply appear independent of your control, then why do they feel so personal? Why does it seem like they belong to you, as if they are you? Your mind has spent your entire life constructing a story, a narrative that ties all of your thoughts, memories, and experiences together into something that feels solid, continuous, and real. It's the story of you. But here's the catch. That story is just another thought. Neuroscientist Antonio Damasio discovered something fascinating while studying patients with brain damage. He found that when certain parts of the brain were affected, a person's sense of identity, their idea of who they are, would completely change. One day, they would believe they were the same person they had always been. The next, they wouldn't recognize their own personality. Some lost all emotional connection to their past selves, as if the I that once existed had disappeared. What this suggests is something unsettling. Your sense of self is not fixed. It's not real in the way you think it is. It's a fragile construction, a mental story that can shift or even vanish under the right conditions. And yet, the mind clings to this illusion, desperately holding on to the idea that there is a permanent, unchanging me at the center of everything. Why? Because without it, everything unravels. Your mind is built to create continuity, to weave together memories, thoughts, and emotions in a way that makes life feel stable. Without that narrative, it would be impossible to function in daily life. But that doesn't mean the story is true. Right now, your mind is telling you a story about yourself, who you are, what you believe, what you like and dislike. But can you actually find this self anywhere? If you try to pinpoint it, it slips away. Are you your body? Your body has changed completely since childhood. Are you your memories? Many have faded, and some may not even be accurate. Are you your thoughts? They come and go without your control. So where is this you that feels so real? This is what some of the greatest thinkers in history have tried to unravel. Philosopher David Hume searched for a stable, unchanging self within himself. But after years of meditation and self-reflection, he reached a shocking conclusion. He couldn't find it. He wrote that whenever he looked inward, all he could observe were thoughts, emotions, and sensations arising and disappearing. But there was no thinker behind them. And if that's true, then the mind's greatest trick is convincing you that you are the thoughts it creates. If you cannot find the thinker behind your thoughts, if the self is just a mental construction built from shifting memories and patterns, then what remains? Most people fear this question. They instinctively resist it because the idea of not being someone feels like an existential threat. The mind is wired to grasp onto identity, to define itself through beliefs, preferences, and personal history. It creates an ongoing inner dialogue, repeating the same patterns over and over again, not because they are true, but because they maintain the illusion of a stable self. But here's where things get interesting. When you stop identifying with this mental noise, something profound happens. For a brief moment, you experience what's underneath it all, a deep silence, a vast awareness that has been present your entire life, unnoticed. This is where psychology, neuroscience, and ancient wisdom unexpectedly meet. The default mode network, DMN, a system in the brain responsible for self-referential thinking, constantly keeps you locked in an internal story. It reminds you of your past, anticipates the future, and keeps reinforcing who you think you are. It's the reason why thoughts loop endlessly, why emotions feel personal, why every experience seems to center around me. But what happens when the default mode network slows down? Scientists have discovered that in deep meditation, during psychedelic experiences, or in moments of extreme focus, this part of the brain quiets down, and with it, the sense of a separate thinking self begins to dissolve. People report feeling completely at peace, as if they have stepped outside of the mental chatter and into something much larger. They describe it as a state where thoughts still arise, but they are no longer theirs. Instead of being caught inside them, they are simply watching, and for the first time, they see thoughts for what they truly are. Not personal, not chosen, not even necessary. This experience isn't just limited to monks or neuroscientists. It happens to ordinary people in everyday life. Have you ever been so deeply immersed in something that you forgot yourself completely? Maybe staring at the ocean, getting lost in music, or being fully engaged in an activity where time disappeared. In those moments, you weren't thinking about yourself. You weren't caught in inner narration. You weren't analyzing or controlling, and yet you still existed. This is what remains when the illusion of self drops, the silent awareness that has been here all along. You don't have to believe in anything mystical to experience this. It's already happening, constantly. The only difference is that most people are so entangled in their thoughts that they don't recognize it. But once you begin to see it, once you step back from thoughts instead of being consumed by them, everything shifts. The constant worries that seemed so overwhelming, they become nothing more than passing mental noise. The sense of urgency, the need to prove yourself, it weakens, replaced by something much quieter. The fear of losing control, it disappears because you realize you were never really in control to begin with. This is what Zen masters have called no mind, not an empty mind, but one that is no longer trapped in thought, a mind that is aware, but not entangled. A mind that experiences, but does not cling. A mind that no longer mistakes itself for every passing thought. But here's the challenge. Even after seeing this, the mind will fight back. Because it has spent years, even decades, reinforcing its own illusion. It will pull you back into old patterns, convincing you that you must take your thoughts seriously. This is where most people get stuck. They get a glimpse of awareness, but then the mind pulls them back in. So the real question is, how do you stay free from the illusion? Because seeing it once isn't enough. You have to know how to stop being pulled back in. The moment you start seeing through the illusion, the mind does something predictable. It fights to regain control. It throws thoughts at you like weapons, trying to pull you back into identification. It reminds you of your past, tempts you with worries about the future, and whispers, "This is all just a passing thought too, isn't it?" This is how the trap works. It doesn't matter if you intellectually understand that thoughts aren't yours. That's not enough. The mind knows how to pull you back in emotionally. It knows your weak spots. It knows the exact thoughts to generate that will make you react without question. And the moment you react, you're caught again. This is why so many people go through cycles of awakening and forgetting. They have moments of clarity where they feel separate from their thoughts, free from mental noise. But then the next day, or even the next hour, they're lost in the same inner struggles, believing the same thoughts all over again. Why does this happen? Because the mind has spent your entire life conditioning you to believe in it. It doesn't just operate on the level of thoughts, it operates through emotions, identity, and deep-seated habits that were built long before you were even aware of them. This is why breaking free from the illusion isn't a one-time realization. It's a shift in how you interact with the mind itself. Take a moment and consider this. How do you know that a thought is yours? The moment it appears, the mind instantly labels it. This is my thought. This is my memory. This is my idea. But if you look closely, you'll see that the thought was already there before the mind claimed ownership. The only thing that makes a thought feel personal is the belief that it belongs to you. Drop that belief and something changes. A thought arises, but it is no longer a command, just a passing event, like the sound of a car driving by. A worry appears, but instead of being pulled into it, you just observe. A craving surfaces, but instead of blindly following it, you realize it was never actually yours to begin with. This is what true awareness feels like, not controlling the mind, but seeing through it. And here's the strange part. The less you identify with thoughts, the quieter they become. The more you observe without reacting, the more gaps start to appear. Gaps where, for the first time, you notice something deeper. A vast, silent awareness that has been there all along, hidden behind the noise. Most people never notice this silence because their attention is constantly being pulled by thought. But the moment you do, everything changes. Instead of being consumed by every passing thought, you start experiencing life as it actually is, not as the mind describes it. You no longer see through the filter of assumptions, fears, and past conditioning. You see reality directly, without distortion. And this is where true freedom begins. But this freedom comes with a challenge. Because the more you disconnect from thought, the more you start to see the entire system that has been keeping you trapped. The illusion isn't just in your mind, it's everywhere. The deeper you go, the more unsettling the realization becomes. The illusion of self isn't just something happening in your mind, it extends far beyond that. From the moment you were born, the world has reinforced this illusion. Society, culture, even language itself. All of it is designed to keep the mind trapped in the idea of a separate self. Think about it. Everything you've ever been taught has revolved around who you are, your name, your nationality, your beliefs, your role in the world. You were given labels, expectations, and responsibilities. And over time, these things weren't just ideas, they became your identity. But here's the truth. None of these things are actually you. They are roles, temporary identities, constructs given to you by the world. But the awareness behind them, the silent observer that has been watching since childhood, has never changed. This is why so many spiritual traditions, from Zen Buddhism to Advaita Vedanta, speak about waking up from the dream of self. They're not talking about becoming something new. They're talking about realizing that you were never what you thought you were. And when you see this clearly, something profound happens. You stop being ruled by fear. You stop being controlled by compulsive thinking. You stop seeing yourself as a rigid, unchanging identity. Instead, you move through life without attachment, free to think, free to act, but no longer lost in the illusion. This is what enlightenment truly means, not an escape from reality, but seeing reality without the filter of the mind's stories. But don't mistake this for passivity. Awakening isn't about withdrawing from the world, it's about moving through it with clarity. Because once you are no longer a prisoner to your thoughts, everything changes. You experience life more fully because you are no longer lost in mental chatter. You interact with others more deeply because you are no longer caught up in your own self-image. You move through challenges with ease because you are no longer ruled by unconscious patterns. And this isn't just philosophy, it's something you can experience directly right now. The next time a thought appears, instead of identifying with it, just observe. Watch it rise, watch it fade. See it for what it truly is, just another passing event in awareness. Because once you realize that you are not the thoughts, not the mind, not the self you've always believed yourself to be, there is nothing left to fear. You are free. If this shifted your perspective, let me know in the comments. Have you ever noticed thoughts appearing on their own? Leave a comment down below. See you next time.